Good evening, everyone. Welcome to York Observatory Study, the online astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. We're broadcasting live from the Alan I. Carswell Observatory located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. To broadcast every Wednesday night at 7:30 local Toronto time. And for any questions or comments you have about our past shows, or if you have any suggestions for future topics, please send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. You can also connect with us on Twitter or Instagram with the handle at York Observatory and Facebook at Alan I. Carswell. I'm Matt, and I'll be one of your hosts this evening along with Deanne, Sergey, June, and Arfa. And tonight we've got a great talk about dark skies and their importance at the Killarney Provincial Park with guest speakers Jeremy Poston, Sean Spencer, and Kathleen Chair. And we're very glad to have you here. And before we actually get started, we have to acknowledge that the York University, the observatory at York campus is in Toronto. And to welcome you to our show, we would like to acknowledge the traditional land that our telescope is on. The observatory acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many indigenous nations. The area known as Sikaranta has been taking care of the Anishinaabeg Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Huron-Wendat and the Métis, and it is now home to many indigenous people. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Our stargazing and astronomical efforts are but the latest in a very strong history on this area. And before we get actually started with the main show, which we are excited about, I would like to give the word to June, who's going to let us know what's up in the sky tonight.
Welcome, everyone. Before we get started with our main show, let's talk a little about what you can see this coming week in the Toronto skies. Well, if we weren't in a winter weather event for the next few days. The moon is in a waxing crescent phase and at 2 days old, since we just passed the new moon in the Lunar New Year this week. Happy Lunar New Year, everyone. Of course, this means that the moon is spending most of its time below the horizon for the night, but our friend Uranus is hiding out in the constellation Aries for you viewers with a telescope. Neptune is in Aquarius along with the moon and Jupiter, and while Neptune sets after 8 p.m., Jupiter and the moon will be setting around 7 p.m. Despite the lack of naked eye wonders up here tonight, there is an absorbent amount of great deep sky objects for telescope users in the direction of Orion. Although one thing we do often notice here in Toronto is how hard it is to see faint objects without a telescope or binoculars. But if we were able to go out to Killarney Park, there would be far less light pollution, as you will hear about later. Now, what if we did have darker skies? I'm going to pass it over to Arfa to discuss what's up in the sky over Killarney Park.
Thank you, June. So now at the Killarney Provincial Park, right after the sunset, we'll be able to observe the star Vega, the brightest star in the northern constellation, but it is only visible for 2 hours after the sunset. We can also see other popular stellar objects in the sky, for example, Betelgeuse, Palladius, and Deneb. Well, also the closest galaxy to us, the Andromeda galaxy, will be visible in the sky and can be observed through a telescope if the sky is clear. M42, also known as Orion Nebula, will be up the horizon in the lower hemisphere for about 4 hours after the sunset. Moving on to our solar system now. The moon phase for tonight is waxing crescent with 0.58% visibility. Now coming to our planets. Jupiter can be caught, if lucky enough, 1 hour after the sunset, which would be located near our moon. But there are high chances it won't be visible through the telescope. And unfortunately, that is the only planet that can be viewed tonight if viewing from the Killarney Provincial Park. Of course, if it is a very dark night out at this location, we might even be able to make out the Andromeda galaxy as a naked eye object. And now over to Dr. Hyde to tell you a bit about our speakers from Killarney for tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Arfa and June and Matt. That was a really great summary. It's inspired me to wish that it was clear tonight. Unfortunately, as mentioned, it is a little bit cloudy. We are in a bit of a weather event. talking about dark skies, the kind of dark skies we're interested in, of course, are the ones that let us see the stars clearly. These cloudy dark skies are not necessarily the problem we're going to be addressing in this talk. So I'm really happy to have with me today a set of people actually from Killarney Provincial Park. We have Jeremy Pawson and Sean Spencer, and Kathleen Jayer is here with us sort of in spirit. She was unfortunately delayed in traffic, but she's actually been on Twitter. So if you are following Killarney Provincial Park at Killarney PP over on Twitter accounts, you can actually see her there. So Jeremy is the park superintendent, and we have Sean, who is the assistant superintendent, both here with us tonight. So I'm not going to take too long with this introduction because they have all kinds of wonderful dark sky information to present to us. So I'm going to say, Sean, come on in and please take the screen share and turn on your camera, and we'll get you set up for your talk. It's great to have you here tonight.
Hi, great. Thank you very much for the introduction, Elena, and very flattered and very pleased to be joining everybody tonight. So as Elena mentioned, I'm here with Sean Spencer this evening, the Assistant Park Superintendent for Killarney Provincial Park. And so a little bit about myself. Again, my name's Jeremy Pawson, Park Superintendent for Killarney Provincial Park. I've been with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Park for just over 20 years now. And I've had the extremely unique and very much pleasure of being in charge of what we like to refer to as the crown jewel of the Ontario park system. So this evening, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about Killarney Provincial Park and the Dark Sky Preserve designation that we have there. We're going to talk a lot about our observatory facilities, what we have available there, some of our capabilities combined with our dark skies. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, why dark skies matter to Ontario parks more than just observing, and how we're seeing the ecological and biological benefits of dark skies as well. So we can just move on to the next slide there. All right, so Ontario Park strategic direction. So Ontario Parks, we do have a 5-year strategic direction plan that guides the different initiatives that we'd like to pursue as an organization. And so in 2017, Ontario Parks decided that one of the pillars we were going to use for moving forward in our strategic direction was sort of embracing dark skies and what they mean for the benefits to ecological integrity in provincial parks. But we also committed to having 5 of our parks designated as dark sky preserves with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Can we jump to the next slide, please? All right, so here we can see a snapshot of that pillar from our actual strategic direction. So you can see on the bottom there, when we talk about ecological integrity, we will develop at least 5 dark sky preserves in operating parks. We like to do this for a number of reasons, and I'm going to get into those details in just a little bit. But if we could jump to the next slide, please, Sean. All right, so the Discovery Program and its strategic direction, I'll talk a little bit about our Discovery Program a little bit. So Discovery programming in Ontario Parks is basically, it's related to our public outreach and education programming, as well as our science department. So at Killarney, the leader of our Discovery Plan is our park biologist, Kathleen Jayer, who again was unfortunately unable to join us. But we've kind of furthered and reaffirmed our commitment to dark skies through this strategic plan. So we've actually committed to developing astronomy programming within 15 parks in this plan, and wanting to sort of support those 5 dark sky preserves in Ontario parks. Now, I should talk about where those dark sky preserves are now. So Killarney, I'm very happy to report, was the first to receive the designation with RASC. Lake Superior was the second to receive the designation. And there is a dark sky preserve designation in Quetico Provincial Park as well. And that is in partnership with State of Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. As some may know, that Quetico Provincial Park borders with the state of Minnesota. Next slide, please, Sean. All right, so our dark skies in Killarney. So just to kind of give you a snapshot of exactly what we're looking at and some of the methodology we use to understand how dark our skies really were and present that to the RASC. So the spreadsheet you can see on the left-hand side of the screen was some of the sky quality readings that we received with our Zenith Sky Quality Meter. We coupled that with the coordinates of where they were taken and the location, so the lake common name, or commonly referred to lake name. We noted the conditions, and as you can see, with the highest rating of 23 being available on the Zenith Sky reading, I believe the lowest reading that we had was 20.66. So a great quality there. And then just on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see Killarney rated as a 2 on the Bortle scale. And so I do have to give credit to Science North, located in Sudbury, Ontario, for determining where we landed on the Bortle scale and providing that graphic for us as well. If we can move to the next slide, please, Sean. All right, so we've got a quick snapshot map of the park here. And so I apologize for the small font there, but you can see these where we actually took our Zenith Sky Quality readings. So for scale, the green area that you're looking at there is about 45,000 hectares in size. That's the size of our provincial park. So roughly around 400 square kilometers. So it did take us about 4 months to get all of these readings and to compile all of the data. And it took 2 crews, as I mentioned, about 4 months to gather all of these readings for us. The area you can see in pink there was our originally proposed dark sky preserve. But we quickly changed our plan as we were applying, and the dark sky preserve now applies to the entire 45,000 hectares of the park, which is the largest dark sky preserve in Ontario parks. Can we move to the next, Sean? Oh, thank you. All right. So I talked a little bit about our discovery programs in Ontario and Ontario Parks, sorry. And, again, this is our main department that delivers public education and advocacy to our park users. So we have a number of different classes. And so for Northeastern Ontario, where Killarney is located, you can see that Grundy Lake, Kettle Lakes, Killarney, and Killbear are the main parks for delivering these educational programs, to which the Astronomer in Residence program and our astronomy programs at Killarney is very much quickly becoming one of the most popular. Thanks, Sean. Okay, so I'm going to allow Sean to introduce himself and hand things over to him to talk about our observatory facility and exactly what we can do at Killarney in terms of viewing.
All right. Thank you for the introduction there, Jeremy. So as Elena and Jeremy said, I'm Sean Spencer, and I'm the Assistant Park Superintendent of the Killarney and French River Park Cluster. I was fortunate enough to begin working in Ontario Parks in 2009 while I was a university student. And I ended up staying on and have worked in a number of roles since then. But most recently, and the one I've enjoyed most, has been working at Killarney since 2018. So, just to provide some additional context to the information that we are presenting, I thought it would be prudent to show everyone where Killarney Provincial Park is situated, both in terms of location and what kind of services we offer to park visitors. So, as you can see on the screen right now, we are located at the Red Pin, approximately 400 kilometers northwest of Toronto by car. This is a little bit more zoomed in here, and you can see that we're about 100 kilometers southwest of Sudbury by road and Sudbury is the urban area near the top edge of this map. So from these two maps, you can clearly see that we are not located near any major urban centers. The park contains, as Jeremy mentioned, 400 square kilometers of wilderness landscapes, and we're most noted for the pink granite ranges along the Georgian Bay coast, as well as the white quartzite ridges of the La Cloche Mountains. We also have over 50 exceptionally clear sapphire colored lakes, and these are set amongst our hills that we are known for, usually covered in nice jack pines. This area has long captivated artists, including the group of Seven's A.Y. Jackson, Franklin Carmichael, and A.J. Casson. So much so that they actually were the ones who persuaded the Ontario government to make this area into a provincial park. In the summer, Killarney provides extensive backcountry canoeing, sea kayaking experiences, as well as outstanding hiking opportunities, including the 80-kilometer Loop to La Cloche Silhouette Trail. And in the winter, we provide cross-country skiing and snowshoeing opportunities. One of our primary focuses at the park is public education. We began astronomy programming at Killarney as early as 1985. Presenters have included park staff, amateur astronomy groups, Blue Coats from Science North, the science center located in Sudbury, Ontario that Jeremy was referencing previously, as well as professional public educators and individual volunteers. The image shown now is actually photographs from programming during Stars Over Killarney in 2019. Beginning in 2018, the park began hosting our annual Stars Over Killarney event. This gathering is targeted at the general public and park visitors, and it is designed to be a fun and interactive event that provides quality public education through a combination of presentations by guest speakers and hands-on activities. Previous partners for this event have included Science North, the Royal Astronomical Society Sudbury Centre, and Point Crondine Park, which is operated by the Tourism Department of Wikwemkong Unceded Territory. Now onto the Killarney Provincial Park Observatory itself. As the name suggests, it is located within the boundaries of the park's RASC recognized dark sky preserve. And this is unique in that there are just over 30 dark sky preserves or sanctuaries in North America. Of those, there are probably less than 10 that have functioning observatories. The impact of observing in a dark sky location is huge, as I'll show shortly. So this is a photo of our observatory complex. As you can see, we possess two telescopes housed in SkyShed pods. These pods provide excellent year-round protection to the scopes and have numerous other benefits. They're nearly maintenance-free, require no power, tracking, or other electronics, are simple and easy to use even when alone, and the larger of the two pods is set up to allow us to slide the dome off, as can be seen on the right-hand side of this image. And the telescopes that can be seen in the foreground here are actually those belonging to volunteers who brought out their scopes, primarily volunteers from the Sudbury Centre with the RASC, who are assisting us in providing views of the night sky to the public and the attendees to Stars Over Killarney in 2019. And this is a bit more of a zoomed out shot where you can see some of the buildings surrounding, as well as the quartzite ridges in the background. I wanted to include this photo here as the building that is second from the right with the green roof is actually in the process of being set up as a war room that allows us to control the telescope remotely. So in the near future, we'll be able to operate the scope without having to deal with any cooler temperatures in the winter months or potentially any bugs in the summer months. So the smaller scope that we have is a self-use observatory. We've established this in 2010, and it is possibly the only free self-use observatory in North America. The telescope is a Meade SCT 10-inch LX 2120 on the Losmondi mount. This telescope is very well suited for making visual observations and is primarily used for visitor self-use We allow families to sign out this telescope and use it for the night, as well as when we run large programs, such as our 300 plus person Stars Over Killarney event. It is nice in that you can manually aim it and get a large number of targets hit relatively quickly, as well as filter a large number of visitors through looking through this scope with the naked eye in a relatively short period of time. During the 2019 Stars Over Killarney event, we unveiled new names for our telescopes in consultation with local Indigenous educators. This telescope was named Wasa de Babing, the phonetic pronunciation of which is currently on the screen. In the local dialect of Anishinaabemowin, this means seeing far at a distance. This dome for our research grade observatory was established in 2018, which was the 125th anniversary of Ontario Parks and the 150th year of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. The primary scope is a 16-inch Meade LX600 advanced comma-free telescope with ultra-high coatings, or ultra-high reflectivity coatings. The secondary scope is a 5-inch extra dispersion refractor that has a apochromatic lens in it with a field flattener and a focal reducer. So this provides views that have like pinpoint stars within a 5-degree field of vision. And then there's also a rail available for a tertiary telescope. And right now we have mounted a Sharp Star 61 millimeter with a field flattener. The imaging equipment that we're currently using has us with a primary camera, which is a full frame Canon EOS 6D Mark II. And we've had this modified to have the red light filter removed. Our secondary camera is a Mallancam Universe, and our planetary camera is a ZWO ASI 120MC. And in addition to this, right now we are testing a Baader flip mirror, which will allow us to switch from the primary camera to the planetary camera without having to refocus. And this is with having both of these cameras mounted to the primary scope. At this location, we also have numerous public presentation capabilities. We have an audio amplification system, and we also have an in-person live feed projection system. So when we have our cameras hooked up to the scope, we can take imaging with our computer and present it directly onto a projector so that everyone in the observing field can all look at the same images at the same time. We are also in the same project that I mentioned earlier, where we're setting up a war room, getting the capability to do high-speed streaming over the internet via Starlink satellite internet. And hopefully we'll have this fully rolled out in the spring of 2022. This telescope was named Kichi Wasa de Babing in Anishinaabemowin, and this means this means seeing very far at a distance. So now that I've talked a little bit about the equipment that we possess, I want to explain why dark skies are so important to us, especially with the type of programming that we run that relies heavily on astrophotography. The image that's currently on the screen is a 10-second exposure of the Rosetta Nebula using a refractor telescope equipped with a nebula filter. This photograph was taken from a location in the Greater Toronto area by one of our volunteers. As you can see, even with only a 10-second exposure, you can barely see the nebula and a few particularly bright stars due to all the noise caused by the light pollution at this location. Now, this slightly off-white rectangle is actually a 2-minute exposure with the same equipment under the same conditions on the same night of the exact same nebula. And as you can see, it pretty much looks like a mostly white rectangle, just from all that light pollution. Now, this photo is of the Veil Nebula and is also a 2-minute exposure. This was taken with a comparable telescope and filter. The big difference here, though, is that this photograph was taken at our observatory in our dark sky preserve under reasonably clear sky conditions. The decrease in noise caused by light pollution is immediately and obviously apparent. Both of these photographs are 2-minute exposures, but in this one here, you can clearly see nice pinpoint stars and a dark black background. No editing has been done to this photograph. This is a raw photo that we've taken at this location. Now, that is not to say that in a brighter location, you can't still get excellent astrophotography, but there's just a little bit more work involved in post-processing. So at our observatory location in Killarney, we have a SQM reading of 21 megs per second squared, which, based on the information that we entered for our scope and let's say an average age of 40 years old and what have you, gives us an estimated telescopic magnitude of 16.7, which is pretty amazing, given that we are talking about things that we are looking at with our naked eye through the scope. We're able to actually image objects with our cameras that are at a much greater magnitude because of some of those computer processing techniques. But we're able to see very, very faint objects and not have the background completely blown out by noise from light. Just to put this in perspective, with our scope that we have, our 16-inch main scope, we're able to observe objects of the same magnitude as a telescope that has a lens with 4 times the surface area if it is located in an area that is suffering from extensive light pollution. So to close things off here, I want to talk a little bit about the astrophotography that we do. This image here was taken from inside the dome of our 16-inch scope and as one of our volunteers in silhouette. So when we do a lot of our astrophotography, we can get amazing fine detail using lucky imaging. And then with that, like, it's a process of image stacking that allows us to really get, like, bring out the light of very faint objects. And it is really one of the key tools for what we do. And having a very dark sky background really makes that processing much simpler and much faster. So you can still apply these techniques and get excellent astrophotography done when you don't have a particularly dark sky. But it just simplifies the process a great deal when you do. Those images I showed earlier that had the almost white background, in the end ended up producing an excellent image. But we are fortunate that we don't have to contend with quite so many challenges. So this image here is one of the better ones that we've managed to capture so far with of Jupiter here. I really like this one because it shows clearly its bright red spot. Our astrophotography program at Killarney is a little bit on the young side, but as it matures and develops, I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to take some even better shots in the near future. Really looking forward to the 2022 season. And if you follow us on social media, hopefully we'll be able to post some of our newer images up there as we take them throughout the year. This image here is of Mars, and I particularly like it because it allows us to see some of the defining features of Mars here. You can clearly see the southern polar ice cap. There's like a faint northern polar hood around the edge of the planet. The atmospheric haze is visible, and you can see the giant canyon, the Valles Marineris, and just being able to see that in images that you take yourself is really exciting for us. So this image here is of M57, and I really like the high contrast and the bright colors of this one. As well, we have the Andromeda Galaxy, always a favorite, just so bright and clear when viewed through our scopes. And this one here is M13. And then here we have M8, another one of my favorites for the bright color. But I do have to say, my favorite that we've managed to capture so far is of the Veil Nebula. Just the wispy tendrils that are visible here, as well as the bright stars and around the nebula itself, really makes this one of my favorites. Alrighty, so that concludes the portion of the presentation that I will be doing here. I'd just like to thank everyone, and hopefully I'll be seeing some of you guys out at the park this coming summer. I'm going to pass it back over to Jeremy to do the portion of the presentation that was originally planned to be done by Kathleen, talking about why it matters to us from a biological perspective. Or dark skies matter to us from a biological perspective. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, Sean. So yeah, as Sean mentioned, Kathleen's not able to join us. I will give Kathleen a little bit of an introduction. Kathleen is relatively new to our Killarney Park team. She does hold an extremely important position, though. She is our chief park naturalist and resident park biologist. So she joined Killarney Provincial Park from Pinery Provincial Park, and she's also worked at our branch office, as well as McGregor Point Provincial Park throughout her career. So very happy to have Kathleen on board with us, and I know she's definitely regretting not being able to join us tonight. So Sean, if we can jump to the next slide. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the obvious benefits of dark skies and the viewing opportunities, but why is this important to Ontario Parks? Well, Ontario Parks is we're guided in all of our the management of our protected areas and our decision-making processes by the Provincial Parks and Conservation Reserves Act. Up on screen here, we've got the purpose, objectives of and management principles and interpretation. So the purpose of the Act is to permanently protect a system of provincial parks and conservation reserves that includes ecosystems that are representative of all of Ontario Park's natural regions, protect significant elements of Ontario's natural cultural heritage, maintains biodiversity, and provides opportunities for compatible, ecologically sustainable recreation. So the following objectives, the following are the objectives in establishing and managing provincial parks. So to permanently protect representative ecosystems, biodiversity, and provincially significant elements of Ontario's natural and cultural heritage, and to maintain these areas to ensure ecological integrity is maintained. So we've mentioned ecological integrity there. So Sean, can we jump to the next slide there? So Ontario Parks defines ecological integrity as, so ecological integrity refers to a condition in which the biotic and abiotic components of an ecosystem and the composition and abundance of native species and biological communities are characteristic of their natural regions and rates of change, and ecosystem processes are unimpeded. So when we were looking at dark skies, specifically at Killarney Provincial Park, what we really wanted to do here was push the boundaries in terms of what we were looking at for sort of that abiotic component of an ecosystem, and looking at and highlighting natural regions and rates of change. And we thought that natural dark skies can maybe help us push those boundaries on how we're viewing a complete spectrum of all of those components. Jump to the next slide, please, Sean. All right. So scientists are starting to understand the numerous ways in which light pollution is as harmful to our ecosystem as any other form of and type of pollution. Sean, next. Yep, thank you. Okay, so there's a lot of different studies out there. You know, an example is the American Ornithological Society found that artificial light at night contributed to the deaths of more than 500 million migrating songbirds every year in the United States alone. Bright lights at night can disorient the birds, impacting their ability to navigate properly, and can lead to a high number of collisions with buildings and other artificial objects. So in Canada, the light abatement program has found similar results. Okay, also, artificial light at night impacts almost every part of the lives of insects. Ontario Park scientists sometimes use light traps at night for studying insect population. You know, we've all been around a street light at night and saw the moths heading straight for that light. And as you can see from this photo, just how many insects are attracted to a single light source. While attracted like this, they're definitely not feeding, and they're definitely not engaging in their typical normal mating habits. All right, so amphibian populations are already stressed due to habitat loss and chemical pollution. Light pollution is, we're finding out, another detriment. There are studies from the University of Binghamton that found when exposed to artificial light at night, tadpole hatchlings, the success of those hatchlings decreased greatly, resulting in a large increased mortality. The study also found that tadpoles that survived were more likely to be impacted by other forms of pollution, such as road salt and naturally occurring parasites. So one thing that we don't talk a lot about in terms of dark skies is the health importance for humans. You know, the artificial light at night can affect proper sleep and wake cycles. Dark skies at night and the reduction of artificial light at night. And we also evolved to have a dependable light and dark periods. You know, so again, you know, we can start to highlight the importance of dark skies outside of just astronomical viewing, and you know, even applied to our own health and certainly the health of the ecosystems that Sean and I are charged with protecting. So to kind of end on a hopeful note, I just want to remind everybody that you know, even though we already care deeply about the importance of dark skies, you know, we want to keep in mind, you know, in terms of Ontario parks, and what we're keeping in mind is, you know, we're keeping birds safe, protecting insect populations. Some people may roll their eyes at that last comment, but you know, and we're helping you know, with amphibians to continue to reproduce and persevere, and that's already making a positive impact on the ecological integrity of Killarney. So I think that that about wraps up our presentation for tonight. I just want to finish by thanking Sean and Kathleen for their contributions. And I'd also like to give a very important thank you to all of Killarney Provincial Parks volunteers, donors, and the friends of Killarney Park. None of the equipment or any of the programming that we're able to offer now would be possible without our volunteers and extremely valued donors. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing everybody at Killarney Provincial Park's Dark Sky Preserve.
Wonderful talk. I thank you very much for coming along. As you may know, we do have some questions for both you and Sean. So Jeremy and Sean, a few questions that have been prepared by our crew here. And while Matt is actually on the way over to grab those questions, let me just take a second to say, it's actually really exciting to have seen, finally all this come together in the form of a live stream from Killarney now out to York. So we're looking forward to doing more of that with the Astronomer in Residence program. So watch websites for updates about that later, everyone. And it is really nice to have seen some of the telescope details as well. So just as maybe a little spoiler for folks who are interested, give us a couple weeks to get the rest of the website set up, and then go ahead and search for the Astronomer in Residence program. The other fun thing I would like to give a shout out for is driving distance time from Toronto out to Killarney Parks is actually quite an interesting subject in and of itself. So I want to thank you for bringing that up, because I have found that depending on who you ask, the amount of driving time that they will tell you might be vastly different. So it's a little bit of a astronomy meter. How fast can you get from Toronto to Killarney Parks safely and legally? So it's quite fun. It is a long drive, but it is totally worth it. So let's go ahead and hand over to for some questions from our crew. First of all, I believe we're starting off with a question from June. Matt, do you want to go ahead and load that slide up? All right, take it away, June.
Well, those were some great images there. But I did want to ask, intrinsically at the moment, dark sky preserves are required to be far from most of the population, making them, much less accessible to Canadians who may benefit from the dark sky experience the most. Is there things that can realistically be put in place or are done to make dark skies more accessible to Canadians who live in urban areas, or lack the economic means for a long distance trip to a Canadian park, or may have never seen a dark sky before? Is this something you've considered previously?
Yeah, thanks, June. Great question. Yeah, absolutely, it is. We've been as our capabilities are growing in terms of connectivity to the internet, our bandwidth, and the capabilities of our equipment. We absolutely have been giving that a lot of thought. And I'll let Sean talk about some of the details. But expanding content and recording content and making that available for people online is something that is a priority for us moving forward. And we do hope to engage our partners like the Alan I. Carswell Observatory in that moving forward. Sean, do you have any comments to add?
Just that if folks are able to make it out to any park, not even just Killarney, just a short distance outside of a major urban center, you can really begin to see a difference in the number of stars that become visible. Even if you're not, in a fully true dark sky, compared to like the downtown core of a major city, you're going to start to be able to see the major constellations. And if you're not able to get that far outside of an urban area, that can be a bit of a start. But as what Jeremy was speaking to, we have some really exciting things in the pipe. I'm not sure how much of them we're allowed to talk about right at this moment, but next year we'll hopefully actually increase our online offerings a great deal. We have a number of blog posts planned for the Ontario Parks blog that will have some very interesting photographs and information, hopefully. And we're planning on posting more astrophotography related content and astronomy content to our social media for Killarney Provincial Park. Additionally to that, as I mentioned and as was alluded to by Lena, we're hoping to offer much more regular and consistent programming online. Once we have the ability to stream from our location, we're hoping that we'll be able to have some regular programming that everyone from major cities or just around the world can enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sean. And just to kind of circle back a little bit, Ontario Parks, we have committed to looking at offering astronomy program in 15 different provincial parks across the province. So trying to get that spread out and available to the people of Ontario who aren't able to travel to Killarney every weekend, for sure.
Awesome, thank you. Now, I have another question. What sort of lighting techniques do you guys use at Killarney to preserve the dark skies while keeping visitors safe during the night at the park?
Yeah, fantastic question, June. So part of the process when I was working through our dark sky application with the Royal Astronomical Society was to actually look at this specific item. Because we do have a commitment to making sure that the protected areas we have are safe for our visitors. So we looked at a number of different things, and so one was to look at shielded directional lighting for lights that we deemed were just unsafe to have turned off at night, which we found really effective and made a difference there. And then we looked at, so while we were doing astronomy programming, we looked at, all of the facilities you saw around the observing field there in the observatories. We made additions to have full cutoff lighting. We installed red lighting around the observatory as well, again for safety. And we were able to implement this thanks to project funding from the Friends of Killarney Park, who allowed us to get a lot of our outdoor lighting switched over to accommodate this, and it's worked out quite well for us.
Mm-hmm. The impact of directional shielded lighting just can't be overstated. Even on a relatively small scale, the impact it can make in terms of keeping light pollution out of the sky is quite surprising. When we actually began our switch at the park, it was immediately apparent that those light fixtures had been changed. So if people at home are looking for things that they might be able to do to contribute to removing light pollution from their local environment, really maybe consider spending the extra time to find shielded lighting fixtures for installations at your own home, camp, or cottage that would have a more limited impact on wildlife and the sky views.
Great, thanks again. Now I believe we have a question by Sergey.
Thank you, June. My first question is, are there any on-site or off-site difficulties or benefits when working in complete darkness?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. We, it's funny when, when we're doing programming and we've got the entire park shut down, and we do get some complaints from the other staff sometimes because they're having trouble doing their jobs. But we've really been able to, from the question before, we've really been able to adapt to that quite well with the shielded directional. And again, I think in terms of benefits, we are observing that in terms of some of our ecological integrity monitoring happening within the park. And those benefits there, I think they outweigh the difficulties, and based on the adaptations we've been able to make with some of the lighting technologies that are out there right now. Sean?
Yeah, and one immediate benefit that is instructive of the effect that light sources have on insects is that in areas where we have reduced the amount of light and focused it with directional lighting, there's actually less of a need to clean those particular walls and areas from spider webs and the insects that get caught in them, right? Because spiders think that those locations are an ideal location to build webs because of all the insects and whatnot that are present. So that is a maintenance issue that has been reduced by changing over to lighting. One of the difficulties that is occasionally encountered is more of a humorous one, though, and that is that occasionally, once you do have your eyes fully dark adapted, somebody will be coming along attempting to either do work, or a member of the public that isn't fully aware of what is happening, just for that instant flash you with the bright light, and then you're completely blind for the next several minutes.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, and it may sound interesting, when we're talking about the bugs to the lights and everything, but in the middle of a wilderness park in northern Ontario, it can get quite extreme quite quickly when we start talking about the insects around the lighting, for sure. So yeah.
Thank you. My next question is related to the image you could see on the slide. The image on the screen is the Ojibwe Gijig Anung Masinagan, or the Ojibwe Sky Star Map, a native sky watcher's star map created by Annette Esley, William Wilson, and Carl Galboy in 2012. Relating to this image, how have Indigenous constellations influenced your observations?
Yeah, so I'll let Sean talk about some of the observations, but I'll talk about how it's affected our sort of partnerships and relationships with the communities that we work with, and and our neighbors that we live with. I think acknowledging the indigenous constellations and providing interpretation and consultation with elders that we work with, has been a great piece in terms of educating the public and developing those relationships with our partners. And it's really been a nice piece that I've really enjoyed. And I'll let Sean talk about some of the observations, and maybe he can touch on our Stars Over Killarney event as well.
Right. So I think one of the most interesting things that you begin to notice when you start looking at the non-Western constellations, whether it is these ones here of the Anishinaabe people, or of like Asian constellations of various types, you notice that there's a very interesting degree of overlap in the patterns that ancient peoples recognized, whether or not they were necessarily viewed as the same animals. You see a lot of overlap in that these particular star patterns were the ones that caught people's eyes and found their way into the mythology of those cultures. And I always found that to be particularly fascinating. And then regarding Stars Over Killarney, in 2019, before we had to put a bit of a hold on these large gatherings due to COVID-19, we were able to actually have a focus on Indigenous content, specifically that of the local Indigenous communities. During that, we had a number of very excellent guest speakers come to give presentations and teachings for the local communities. One of the images that I presented in my slideshow, actually, that was on the guest presenter slide, showed a professor from the local university, Laurentian University in Sudbury, giving a teaching about the 13 grandmother moons, using the back of a turtle shell as a prop, because of the interconnectedness between the sky, the land, the animals, and the people. It is really interesting and engaging, and I'm hoping that in the future we're going to be able to continue to have programming like that. If things go according to plan, we'll be having another Stars Over Killarney event this fall, with further details to be announced in the near future. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for storytelling in the constellations here, and there's plenty more that we haven't gotten to yet, and hopefully we will in the future.
Thank you for your very insightful answers. Now, Dean will ask you his questions.
Thanks, Sergey. So my first question is kind of a simple question, but how often does the cloudiness affect, how often does cloudiness happen at Killarney, and how much does it affect observing?
Right, great question. And you know, it's interesting because Killarney, you can kind of see those large hills or those mountains in the background of that picture to the right there, and quite often that can affect you know, how moisture is developing in the atmosphere just above Killarney Park. And you know, we also do see some lake effect being directly on Georgian Bay and adjacent to Lake Huron as well. So I mean, you know, I wouldn't say more or less than anywhere in Killarney, but we can have some interesting spells where you know, the cloud formations will move in and they'll just kind of sit right on those mountains for you know, it could be for a couple of days at a time, but and then again, you know, the prevailing winds that we see off of the Great Lakes can swoop them away pretty quickly as well. So yeah, great question. And you know, we do have some interesting little weather patterns at Killarney for sure.
Mm-hmm. The area of the province that we're located in is reasonably close to Sudbury, which as an urban center in Ontario has the highest number of sunny days annually on average. But we are under a substantially increased lake effect because we are right on the shores of Georgian Bay. In the wintertime, with the humidity being low and the dry air, there's absolutely spectacular viewing opportunities on a regular basis. You'll actually see on those nights very limited twinkling of those stars. It is really quite interesting. In the summertime, we do have, rather than just clouds, also have to deal with humidity on a regular basis. And that humidity can also make the sky a little bit more opaque than it otherwise would be.
Yeah, great point, Sean. And one other piece is during the winter months or the cold weather months, lake ice cover on Georgian Bay and Lake Huron do have a pretty significant effect on the amount of precipitation that we see in Killarney. So you know, even depending on how far the ice cover is going out into the lake, could be affecting, you know, if we're seeing a lot more or significantly less of that winter precipitation.
Thank you. Next question. So obviously Killarney Parks is a great park for observing and all that, but it can be a little far for most people in major cities. So in your opinion, what are some ways that we can help reduce light pollution in major cities like Toronto?
Yeah, sure. So I think, you know, really highlighting some of the successes that we've had, right? That, you know, I mean, Sean talked about the real effectiveness of our directed and shielded lighting, and you know, the type of light that we're using as well. You know, that's really been the biggest piece, and then, you know, small pieces like, you know, we've removed a lot of our unnecessary lighting that we would have on side of buildings. You know, that we would think we're there for safety, but you know, when we really looked at it, it's like, you know, do we really need that bright orange light on the side of that building? And it was amazing when we really took inventory and started to look at what we needed and what we didn't, and how much light we were throwing up into the sky that really wasn't necessary. So I mean, that's really where I think it can start. The RASC has a lot of great resources on what municipalities and cities can do to you know, to start to work towards you know, recapturing some of that light that they're throwing out there. Any other tips, Sean?
Yeah, the RASC that you mentioned is a great resource. They have a lot of information on the things that can be done. And then if you're looking for something specific that you can do, advocacy with your local municipal government, letting them know that light pollution is a concern to you as one of their constituents, can really go a long way. One of the major sources of light pollution is street lights. And if there is a program put in place to have low light pollution fixtures get installed as things are being refurbished as part of an annual or a regular maintenance cycle, that can, over the long term, have a very big impact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, the biggest balancing piece for us was really looking at that public safety to unnecessary lighting piece, and how we were judging that and measuring it. That was the trickiest part for us, for sure.
Thank you so much for your responses. And I think we're going to go to the outro now.
Thank you very much, Park Superintendent Jeremy and Assistant Superintendent Sean, for your enlightening presentation. Is there anything else that you would like to add for the audience to take away?
No, I don't think so. No, just we really hope that that people are going to get a chance to come up to Killarney and visit the Dark Sky Preserve and our observatories. And if you can't make it up to Killarney, please, we've got hundreds of provincial parks across the province that are offering outdoor recreation and programming opportunities similar to what we're offering at Killarney. So looking forward to seeing everybody.
And I do just have one additional comment. It might be a bit of a useful tool for folks if you are planning on coming up to Killarney for a visit and are interested in what the viewing forecast might be. The Calgary RASC on their website has a night sky planner that is pretty useful for getting the information that you might want to look at that particular location. And then there is a website called cleardarksky.com, and there is a forecast, observing forecast for Killarney Provincial Park, and it will tell you roughly what the viewing will be that night about a couple days in advance using Environment Canada data. But anyways, I would just like to once again reiterate Jeremy's comments and thank everyone, and really looking forward to seeing everyone out there, whether it's in the park or online.
Thanks very much again. And I'll say this real quick thank you to Jeremy, Sean, and Kathleen, who wasn't able to make it but did contribute. So but it's been wonderful having you all here today. So we are going to go ahead and officially pass over and end the show. Great questions from our crew, great answers from everybody here. I don't know about you all, but I can't wait to see some nice dark skies. All right, so I'll hand this over to Sergey, and let's go ahead to the outro.
It's been great having you here for our Teltube. Now we'll begin the official outro for the show. Please feel free to turn off your cameras. Well, everyone, you've been listening to the Alan I. Carswell Observatory's weekly Teltube broadcast, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening have been Matt, Arfa, June, Dean, and myself, Sergey. Our wonderful guests tonight have been Jeremy Pawson and Sean Spencer from Killarney Provincial Park, who, by keeping the sky dark, have made our worlds brighter. For more information, Killarney Provincial Park can be found at https://www.ontarioparks.com/park/Killarney. Make sure to leave any comments or questions in the comment section of the video and talk to us in the chat right now. We will be around for the next 20 minutes to answer your questions. All of our programs are free, but if you'd like to make a donation, see our website at observatory.info.yorku.ca. You can always connect with us on Twitter with the handle @YorkObservatory, and check out our website for show notes, content updates, and contact info at observatory.info.yorku.ca. Thanks for tuning in, clear skies, and have a good night.